Hello and welcome to another 9-minute Bible study. Our starting point, Acts chapter 13, verse 13. And when Paul and his company loosed from Paphos, they came to Perga in Pamphylia, and John, departing from them, returned to Jerusalem. Let's hold there for a second. In the first part of chapter 13, Paul and company were commissioned by the Holy Spirit to travel on what would become known as the first missionary journey. After the church in Antioch fasted and laid hands on them, Paul and Barnabas conducted the first part of the missionary journey. That would be to the Isle of Cyprus, where they went from the city of Salamis all the way to Paphos. At the end of the journey in Paphos, that's when Sergius Paulus, hearing the gospel, became a believer in Jesus, and that's where Elymas the sorcerer, he became blind for a season. At the end of this first phase of the first missionary journey, Paul and Barnabas, they set sail for, as we just read, Perga in Pamphylia. The end of the verse was John Mark departing from them, returning to Jerusalem. This would be a key moment not only in the life of John Mark, but as we will see as we move along, between Paul and Barnabas in the short run. Keep in mind who was called to go on the first missionary journey. The Holy Spirit said, "Set apart Barnabas and Saul for the purpose that I have for them." The Holy Spirit did not tell John Mark to go on the trip. If the Holy Spirit wanted him to go, he would have mentioned him in chapter 13, verse 2, but he didn't. John Mark, well-meaning, got ahead of God, found that he was not where he was supposed to be. He returned to Jerusalem. As I said, this would cause some problem between Barnabas and Paul, but that's coming in a later chapter. In the short run, we just see that when one is not called, they probably should return home to where they were supposed to be to begin with. Verse 14. But when they departed from Perga, they came to Antioch in Pisidia, and went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and sat down. Verse 15. And after the reading of the law and the prophets, the rulers of the synagogue sent unto them, saying, Ye men and brethren, if ye have any word of exhortation for the people, say on. This seemed to be the normal course of events. Paul and Barnabas, they arrive in the city of Antioch in Pisidia. They go to the synagogue. There, after the word is read, the leader of the synagogue asked them if they had anything to say to the people. Word of exhortation. Little did they know that Paul did have a lot of words of exhortation for that group. Verse 16. Then Paul stood up, and beckoning with his hand, said, Men of Israel, and ye that fear God, give audience. Verse 17. The God of this people of Israel chose our fathers. Let's hold there. Who chose Israel? God the Father. It began when? When God told Abram to leave his father's house to go to a land where he would tell him to go. God also chose the seed of Abraham through Sarah, that would be Isaac. Then he chose Jacob, who would later be renamed by the Spirit Israel. So what do we see? God calling these patriarchs with one purpose in mind, to set up this holy, separate nation out of which the Christ would be born. Let's continue. The second part of verse 17. And exalted the people when they dwelt as strangers in the land of Egypt, and with a high arm brought he them out of it. in this we see what would be Israel's stay in Egypt. At first, the people were blessed beyond measure. The Egyptians, they got very jealous, became threatened of the Israelites. They put them into bondage. We know what happened. God sent Moses, and through Moses, God delivered the children of Israel out of Egyptian bondage. Verse number 18. And about the time of 40 years suffered he their manners in the wilderness. This would be the events from Exodus, the middle part of the chapter, going all the way through the book of Deuteronomy. And when Paul used the words that he had suffered, boy did he, because the children of Israel continued to disobey God over and over again, to the point where the original out of Egypt generation died in the wilderness, replaced by their children. So yes, for the 40 years, God did suffer their manners. Verse 19. And when he had destroyed 7 nations in the land of Canaan, he divided their land to them by lot. This would be the events of the book of Joshua, where the children of Israel crossed over the Jordan River, and they systematically, as led by the Lord, conquered the land, destroying the 7 nations that dwelt in the land of Canaan. Verse number 20. And after that he gave unto them judges about the space of 450 years, covered in the book of Judges, until Samuel the prophet, covered in the first part of the book of 1 Samuel, verse 21. And afterward they desired a king, and God gave unto them Saul the son of Kish, a man of the tribe of Benjamin, by the space of 40 years. This is referring to pretty much the bulk of the second part of the book of 1 Samuel, the reign of Saul as king. At first, Saul reigned correctly, but then he went into disobedience and he began not to follow the Lord his God. It cost him his kingdom. By the end of the book of 1 Samuel, he is killed in battle. Here, this man, he was supposed to follow the Lord. He did not. We also need to mention that throughout the second part of 1 Samuel, we see the beginning of the rise of what would be King David, whom would take the kingdom in the book of 2 Samuel, verse 22. And when he had removed him, he raised up unto them David to be their king. Let's hold there for a second. This is the events in 2 Samuel. This is the events also in the second part of 1 Chronicles. Because Saul was disobedient, the Lord raised up a man after his own heart by the name of David to be king over all Israel. And we will pick up with this in our next.